All right, here we go. This is what
the
time
life
it
of a
is.
soldier is not just a job, it's a calling and a sacred tradition passed down from father to son, brother to sister, and one generation to the next. At every hour of danger, our noblest citizens have answered that call. Time and again, our enemies have learned that if you dare to threaten the American people, American soldier will chase you down, crush you, and cast you into oblivion. The last sound you ever hear will be the chilling howl of Black Hawks.
This is the peace president, I'm told, so I would hate to see what a war president would look like. Despite the whole peace through strength Orwellian thing, we get that. Let's hear what else he has to say.
Thunderous boom of artillery fire, or the ferocious roar of a U.S. Army infantry brigade.
The musical score is epic. The visuals, not so much. I could have done this a lot better.
Our adversaries, there's no greater fear than the United States Army. Now it's your duty to shield the flame of freedom that was first lit 250 years ago by the heroes of Concord Bridge and Bunker Hill. Standing before you today, I am more confident than ever that in the days ahead and every generation to come, the U.S. Army will heap glory upon glory. You will protect every inch of U.S. soil, and you will defend America to the ends of the earth.
Wow. You don't have to like the guy, but man, that was one hell of a speech and production. I don't even know if the speech is new, but this video is new. Trump released this triumphant call to arms today on his True Social account. The timing, of course, is incredibly sus, considering the fact that it appears as though they're evacuating embassies in the Middle East. Now, I already did a video on what's going on in the Middle East today, so go watch the previous one if you want updates. I just wanted to talk about this video because, man, this is the Warhawk's wet dream. This is something that Lindsey Graham probably masturbates to frequently. He probably has this playing in the background while he's doing whatever it is, freaky stuff that guy probably likes to do. Okay, so this has to be one of the most powerful patriotic invocations, I think, that we've had in many, many generations. And it's probably going to be lost on a lot of people because of all the political stuff. And I'm by no means an advocate for this sort of propaganda. We know when he says things like, what was one of the quotes? So he actually accompanied it with this tweet. He said, "I am more confident than ever that in the days ahead and every generation to come, the U.S. Army will heap glory upon glory. You will summon," and these key buzzwords, glory and summon, inexhaustible courage to protect every inch of U.S. soil. You will defend America to the ends of the earth. All of these are just incredibly powerful statements. And of course, one sentence is very pertinent, that you will protect every inch of U.S. soil. I've been suspecting that these protests that have been fomenting are for the purpose of four main reasons: building out an administrative framework for civil defense, war mobilization, a diversion away from failed foreign policy, and escalation of conflicts that, like what we are currently seeing in Iran, and last but not least, population suppression, because we're entering an era of austerity and economic immiserated circumstances that are going to likely see a lot of people lose it. When people have nothing left to lose, they lose it. So in an attempt to quell the population, they're going to have to become more heavy-handed in their approach. That video, man, I just can't get over it. Like the timing of it all. The fact that it was released within a few hours of this buzz about embassies being evacuated and the war rhetoric ramping up to dangerous levels, oil spiking through the roof. Now Witkoff is saying that, oh yeah, we're still going to meet in Oman on Sunday. So the Iranians are now claiming that all of this is just theatrics, okay, the level 4 travel advisory. I actually think that Iraq was already a level 4 travel advisory, and it's important to note that the evacuation order wasn't mandatory for all of the embassies. They're basically just saying non-essential personnel we would advise that you vacate due to increased hostilities and risk that you might be collateral damage and get caught in the crossfire with respect to what's going to happen. Now, this, of course, came on the exact same day that the UKMTO, which is I think it's the UK Maritime Trade Organization. I can't remember the exact meaning of the acronym, but they're now imposing an advisory for the Strait of Hormuz. So this is pretty serious, what is developing right now. But the Iranians are claiming this is all a Psy-Op. This is just the Americans posturing in an attempt to get us to make concessions. The problem with that argument is that Iraq made concessions. There was no confirmation of weapons of mass destruction. The display that you've seen today with Pete Hegseth when he was giving questions to the deposition by Lindsey Graham as to whether or not Iran could possess a nuclear weapon potentially, and he said yes, and would they use it potentially, and he said yes. Well, Lindsey Graham didn't ask him what were the conditions upon which they might use it in that interrogation. He just said, would they use it? And of course, a nation would use a nuclear weapon under certain circumstances, like if they're being nuked by another country who doesn't want them to have nuclear weapons. Okay, so we are sleepwalking into something incredibly, dangerously serious, and people have no idea. Now, the Iranians have been sending some pretty ominous signals as well. They successfully did a missile test with a 2-ton warhead. Now, a 2-ton warhead could potentially be within the size, and I'm not an expert on this, but apparently that's in the payload range that would accommodate a nuclear warhead. So they're sending these types of signals. Go and watch the video I did before this one where I break down all of the minutiae in terms of what has been happening today. Honestly, this video that Trump posted today, this is what they've been waiting for. And I've been saying this the whole time, that you're never going to have a more ideal World War III president. This is their guy. He has the political capital. He knows that MAGA will follow him to the ends of the earth, because what other substitute is there? And now that they have this justification to put the population on a sort of quasi-martial law lockdown of sorts, this is exactly what they need, because look, if you know that there's going to be protests, there's going to be unrest, there's possibly going to be a nuclear war. You got to get your military onto the streets. You got to preempt the problem. These guys know that nuclear war is survivable, okay? And this is why they're not just going to retreat into their bunkers and hope for the best when they emerge. They want to keep some sort of government in place after shit hits the fan, okay? Because they know that they're going to have to police tens of millions, however many people are left, probably still hundreds of millions of people. It's in the electromagnetic pulse phase of things, in the grid down phase of things, that things get really crazy and people realize, holy shit, it's really hard to grow and cultivate food and get clean drinking water and reestablish a supply chain. It's really difficult to do all that stuff without this very sophisticated network that we've developed of logistics and transport and manufacturing and all of the various levels of critical infrastructure. I believe there's 12 core critical infrastructures that need to be maintained in order for society to function. And if FEMA can't do that, which they won't be able to do, shit's going to hit the fan. So you need bodies on the ground. I can't believe that they released this video today. I mean, I just can't believe that it only took 4 months to get here, to get to, oh, well, I guess there's nothing we can do about Russia and Ukraine. I guess we're going to go to war with Iran. I guess we're going to put military in the streets. And whatever's going on with China, Trump says that they got a deal. Who knows? Because the Chinese are saying they've established a framework for a deal. You really can't tell from day to day. I mean, did anybody think 3 weeks ago that Elon Musk would be accusing Trump of being a pedophile? I mean, things are moving so fast right now, and it is incredibly disconcerting being so close to these problems because I can feel it. I can feel something really bad is about to happen, and we're about to turn a corner, and the world is never going to be the same when this war with Iran starts. This is not like a war with Iraq. This is different. This is going to alter global trade. It is going to, if they do actually do it, if they go all the way, which it appears as though they are, there's some political stuff going on in Israel, which is also a motivating factor. I believe their coalitional government could potentially be falling apart, which gives Netanyahu even more incentive to pull the trigger now than later on. But forgive me because I'm not entirely up to speed on how their process works. But according to mainstream news networks, and all this information just came out, bam, 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 rapid fire. Okay, it's just, air GPS jamming taking place in the northern parts of Iraq, increased aviational activity throughout that region. You have groups now saying that they're ready to attack U.S. bases should Iran be attacked. So shit is about to go down. And there were warning signs everywhere in the past week that sometimes become white noise because the space becomes so saturated with information that it's difficult to really look at something and derive certainty. But yeah, these are Marines training, I believe, in a field in LA. I think this is an up-to-date video, but they're training for riot control. Somebody told me in the comment section that the Marines were immune from posse comitatus, that they could be utilized in that respect. I mean, regardless. I mean, if you're okay with it, hey, look, that's just the world we're heading into. But just remember, if the government changes hands and the troops are still on the ground, those troops are going to be pointing their guns at the exact same people, and those people are going to be you. Okay, it's all one and the same, right? So just bear that in mind. Now, this is what Trump had to say when asked. He was at I believe it was the play, Les Miserables. And in addition to being asked who he identifies with, Jean Valjean, or Javert, of course, Jean Valjean being the protagonist, who is the guy who was illegitimately jailed and then broke out of jail and led the revolution and blah, blah, blah. And then there was Javert, who represented the establishment and the authority. And he couldn't quite say which one he was, which is honest, right? Because that shows that, he's thinking about it. Because, look, there's a little bit of Javert and Jean Valjean in all of us. I would say at this point in time it's looking a bit more like Javert. But, hey, good luck convincing millions of people of that. Let's hear what he has to say.
Could you provide an update on Iran? We're hearing reports that U.S. personnel are being moved out of the region within striking distance.
Well, they are being moved out because it could be a dangerous place, and we'll see what happens. But they are we've given notice to move out, and we'll see what happens.
Is there anything that can be done to dial the temperature down in the region?
They can't have a nuclear weapon. Very simply. They can't have a nuclear weapon.
Okay, so as far as I know, they don't want a nuclear weapon. If they wanted a nuclear weapon, they could have had one a long time ago. Now, look, I get it. I'm not naive to the fact that why wouldn't you want a nuclear weapon? Every country that has nuclear weapons doesn't get fucked with. So of course they want a nuclear weapon. But I guess the idea is that they probably could have done it already. I mean, they've been talking about this since 2003, okay, when they did the Millennium Challenge exercise in which the U.S. discovered that they would likely lose a war to Iran, like 20 out of sorry, 90 out of 100 war games. I don't know the exact amount. And that was at a time when Iran was weaker and the United States was way stronger than they are relatively. They were the preeminent global power at that point in time. There wasn't competition. There wasn't people who could back Iran up, and Iran's military was weak compared to where it was today and not nearly as well tested. So even if they were to demonstrate that, hey, okay, we're not going to do enrichment, we're going to give it to the Russians. We're going to resign our sovereignty to whoever you deem to be acceptable. And there's rumors right now that Putin is waiting for this shit to pop off to really start to go ham in Ukraine. Okay, this is why he's patient and why he hasn't reacted to the attacks on nuclear bombers yet, because he knows that this fuse is about to be lit. And if he can just hold on a little bit while longer, then it's going to be him versus Europe, because the United States is going to be fully preoccupied in Iran if this shit actually goes down, because Iran is going to hit back hard this time. If Israel, like they're saying, according to U.S. officials, Israel is poised to launch an operation on Iran quite possibly within the next 48 hours. Now, like I said, typically these evacuations from embassies, they usually precede any sort of military engagement by weeks, if not months. But in this particular instance, Trump is still trying to feign division with Netanyahu and make it appear as though that they're on opposite sides of this, that Trump wants a peace deal and he's not about the war. So in that respect, were they to slowly, incrementally ramp things up, there has to be an element of this theatrical production that has Israel blindside, against the best wishes of the Americans, even though everybody realizes this dog and pony show for what it is. I mean, they're not even really trying anymore. They were kind of at the start where Trump would come on and say, yeah, Witkoff would talk a really good line, and then everybody kind of would be put at ease temporarily. But people aren't falling for that anymore, I don't think. And it's evident that there's an agenda, and no matter what happens. And if you're Iran, really, when you think about it, Iran makes a good argument. They've invested so much blood, sweat, and tears into this program with great sacrifice under debilitating sanctions for decades. And now you're coming in and you're saying that you're just going to take it all away. Okay, and this is a nation that was able to create nuclear energy from the ground up. Okay, now I'm sure they had some help here and there, like everybody did at one point. But I can understand where they're coming from. And quite frankly, a lot of people think that Iran with nuclear weapons would be more stabilizing, because then you wouldn't, the United States and Israel wouldn't go to war with him, because they know what the outcome would be. It would be regional, mutually assured destruction. Okay, but there's some people who are just longing for a bloodletting. It's almost like malevolent. It's like human sacrifice or something. People want a war. There's people who really do want a war right now for some reason. I don't get it personally. Maybe it's something to do with the elites. Maybe we're their entertainment. Maybe this really truly is the Hunger Games. But you can feel that tension in the air, okay? The U.S. is anticipating that Iran could retaliate on certain American sites in the neighboring Iraq, which is why they're evacuating personnel. And they've been doing that for a while. So when we go back and we analyze what the precursors to this conflict were, it's going to make perfect sense. It always does, right? What's beeping here? Something's beeping. This is part of the reason why the U.S. advised some Americans to leave the region, with the State Department ordering non-emergency government officials to exit Iraq due to heightened regional tensions. Iran was actually considering a preemptive strike, which probably would be the smart thing to do. I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying, if you know that there's going to be a fight, don't just sit there and wait to get hit and allow the other side to have the initiative. go on the initiative. And that, of course, would be a warhawk's wettest of wet dreams, because then they could say, look, we were just minding our own business. We weren't planning on talking about striking your nuclear facilities, possibly with nuclear weapons, for the last 10 years. No, we were just minding our own business over here, and you just struck us out of nowhere, right? So I don't think they're going to do that. I don't even know if this is going to happen this week, this month. It's going to happen this year. I'm 99% confident that shit's going to go down this year. In fact, I am 50% confident that this is going to happen before July. And there's a very distinct possibility that this happens this weekend after the oil markets close. Because what they're going to want to do is what they usually do when they're going to do something big. They do it on a weekend. That way the markets have a little bit of time to process it, and the panic doesn't trigger the algorithms to do a massive sell-off, which would completely, potentially, crash the markets. The growing view in Iran is being voiced within conservative circles and among leaders within the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. The failure to initiate action against Israel will give the enemy a battlefield and political advantage, as happened with Hezbollah and Lebanon when it entered the confrontation late. Proponents of this view believe that any delay in breaking the current equations could put Iran in a position of reaction and cause it to pay a higher price later. We are going to release a video that we did with Alex Craner, and one of the things that he was talking about was how the Russians thought that NATO was going to do a decapitation strike, like a nuclear strike, that they were going to go for broke and roll the dice on nuclear Armageddon. And that was why all that stuff in the run-up to the war with Russia and Ukraine, the shoot down of satellites, that was signaling to, strategic signaling to the United States. And so they preempted that punch in the face with their own punch in the face by going on the initiative in Ukraine. So the Iranians are considering maintaining that initiative. Now, the Iranians, if anybody is ready to turtle in, it is them. We had Professor Morandi on, who explained how the weaknesses inherent in Hezbollah's plan as a result of the divide politically in the country of Lebanon doesn't necessarily exist to the same extent as it does in Iran, where for the most part they are orthodox, they are homogenous in their culture and politically, even though there's a diversity of views. When it comes down to just, I presume, Persian pride, if you will, despite the fact that you might not like the Ayatollah, I'm sure there are going to be some patriotic sentiments that emerge in that front as well, that we probably can't even truly appreciate being where we're at. Okay, so when you have a nation from overseas encroaching on your borders and trying to dictate what you can do in your own country, you got to imagine if that was us and we had a shared culture in this ancient history, chances are you're going to be motivated to preserve that and fight for it, right? And this is a mountainous region. They can't get Yemen. So the question is, what are they going to do? Okay? And is Witkoff the guy? Because Witkoff is starting to just seem like the guy that kind of distracts you. Well, they're cleaning you out in the back. Like if you're going to go on a heist, or, you have to have somebody to create a diversion. So you get this guy, slick talking, comes up, shakes your hand, talks really nice, and they're cleaning you out while this conversation is going on. I think that's bared out in what we've seen with Russia as well, where we've seen no progress whatsoever. In fact, things have just incredibly gotten worse. So I suspect that's what's going on. Israel, according to U.S. officials, has been ready to go and has been told they are fully ready to launch an operation into Iran. This is part of the reason the U.S. advised some Americans to leave the region. U.S. anticipates Iran could retaliate on certain U.S. sites in Iraq. Witkoff is planning to meet with Iran for the 6 rounds of talks this Sunday. As I've always stated, they're not building those bunkers for nothing. They're going to be used someday. And heaven forbid the hubris that the West is currently being driven by doesn't become our undoing. I've always said that we are an above ground superpower. When you're the global hegemon, you don't have to dig a lot of bunkers because you're the one who's on the offensive. However, in this particular instance, I think that bunkers, deep underground bunkers, could prove incredibly useful. And those shelters that shield against the bottle rockets of Hamas and Hezbollah are not going to suffice with respect to what is coming. There is a distinct possibility that Iran already has nuclear weapons, okay? And if that is the case, and if they actually target Israel, which I don't think, if they're playing the same game as Vladimir Putin, who I'm not entirely convinced the Russians want peace. In fact, I'm pretty certain that they don't. If anything, if you're Russia right now, despite what all the people stricken with optimism bias are saying, if you're Russia and your economy isn't doing so well as a result of low prices of oil, tell me you don't want the price of oil to go up. Tell me you don't want to create a situation where Europe has no choice but to allow the passage of your shadow fleet. Not allow, but avoid any potential altercations and perhaps even relieve some sanctions, okay? So the Iranians know this, and you can sense it in the way they engage diplomatically with the Russians. If Russia was truly an ironclad ally of the Iranians, they would have extended the nuclear umbrella long ago. The fact that they have not done that tells you that they probably want a war, because had they done that, that would eliminate the prospect of a war immediately. Now, of course, there's a history there. There, of course, is dual alliance with Israel, with the Russians. There's a lot of Russian-speaking Israelis. These are things that they have to factor in. However, if they didn't want a war, all Russia and China would have to do is say, hey, if you do that, then we're now strategic partners, and we have a mutual defense pact, and we will come to your aid if shit hits the fan. And you likely wouldn't have a war. But they're not doing that. Trump is not calling in the Israeli attack dogs at all. So they want a war. The war is going to happen. It is going to happen. Okay, we need to stop talking about, is it going to happen? And we're past the point of this impacting the outcome in the form of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It doesn't matter what you say now, the war is going to happen, okay? It is written in the stars, and all we can do at this point is prepare for it, because there is going to be protests, probably on a scale like you've never seen before, okay, when this war begins. There is going to be protests on a dystopian scale. And that is why they're bringing out the military now. You know, we don't give our military class enough credit. They do think several moves ahead. And I think that what Israel is going to attempt to do is going to surprise people. They probably have some kind of decapitation chain of command plan. They probably got a 0 day, guys. I'm sure they have many, many 0 days that they are waiting to unleash, that are going to attempt to completely, maybe not completely, but drastically impede Iran's ability to stage a counterattack. I suspect that that's what's going to happen. There's going to be some 0 day in the form of another pager-style attack. It's going to be a cyber attack. It's going to be assassinations. It's going to be what we've seen with the Ukrainians. And, you know, who knows what it will be. I mean, these guys sit there and war game this all day. Like, what is the linchpin in the plan? There's so many linchpins along the way. You know, is it just, you know, taking out the bunker doors of these places to buy more time? Like, you know, there's so many different parts of the supply chain that they could attack that might limit the Iranians' ability to stage any sort of counterattack. So that counterforce strategy will be employed, I do expect, if they plan on doing something, and if this isn't all just for show, and they're just trying to intimidate the Iranians, okay? So that's what I got for you guys today. Stay tuned. We got Alex Craner coming on the channel, and it's going to be a great show. Great show. Very insightful guy. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.